On today's episode of Locked On Oilers, the preseason is underway. What happened last night against the Winnipeg Jets and what to expect tonight against the Seattle Kraken. All that and much more on today's episode of Locked On Oilers.
You're Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to the Locked On Oilers podcast. I'm your host and former Oilers game day producer, Brett Holden. As mentioned on today's episode, we are going to be talking about the preseason that is underway. Last night, the Edmonton Oilers took a 4-0 victory over the Winnipeg Jets in home at Rogers Place, in Rogers Place. Where I was going with that. A very interesting lineup for the Edmonton Oilers there. We will start off with that in just a bit. Later on today's episode, we are also going to be talking about two Edmonton Oilers prospects that I think could and one that certainly should make the Edmonton Oilers roster. The other one I think is making a very, very serious case for it. Here's a quick spoiler alert. It is not Philip Broberg that I'm going to talk about today. We'll talk about that in a little bit later on in today's episode. And to end today's episode, we are going to do a quick little preview of tonight's game against the Seattle Kraken in Seattle. The lineup has just dropped for the Edmonton Oilers, or at least the Edmonton Oilers that are in Seattle right now. We will know more about the lineup later on, closer to puck drop, but all that will be on today's episode of Locked On Oilers. Thank you so much for making Locked On Oilers your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you find your podcasts. Where we are going to start off is from yesterday afternoon, basically yesterday afternoon, we'll call it last night, as the puck drop on the Edmonton Oilers' first preseason game happened yesterday at 4 p.m. against the Winnipeg Jets in Edmonton at Rogers Place, and it was a big win for the Edmonton Oilers. A couple of notable storylines coming out of that game and heading into that one as well. We're going to start off with the lineup that the Edmonton Oilers doled out for that game. On the first line was Warren Foegele, Ryan McLeod, and Jesse Puljujärvi. A little bit of a mixture from the lines over the last couple of days, as Jesse Puljujärvi was playing on that second line with Leon Draisaitl and Zach Hyman. Now, going into this game, it seems like this might be a formidable third line for the Edmonton Oilers, or it could just be a way to get Jesse Puljujärvi into some game time. On the second line, Dylan Holloway along with Brad Malone and Jake Virtanen. On the third line, Tyler Benson along with James Hamblin, almost called him Jack Hamblin. That's a cool name though, Jack. And Xavier Bourgault, a pretty solid line there as well. And the fourth line for the Edmonton Oilers, Reed Schaefer along with Noah Philp and Jake Chiasson. The defensive lines look like this. Brett Kulak and Evan Bouchard was the top pairing. We'll talk about that pairing in a little bit. Markus Niemelainen started the scoring last night, like less than a minute in for the Edmonton Oilers. He started along with Jason Demers. Very solid pairing there. And then the final pairing for the Edmonton Oilers, Ryan Murray and Dmitry Samorukov. Stuart Skinner did start in net for the Edmonton Oilers, and then Calvin Pickard came in halfway through the second, if I'm not mistaken, maybe even in the third for the Edmonton Oilers. Now, last night, where we are going to start is with the best player on the ice for the Edmonton Oilers yesterday, and that was their 2020 pick from, 2020, Dylan Holloway, 14th overall selection by the Edmonton Oilers back in 2020. And you know what? Best player on the ice in that game. He ended up with the first star of the game for the Edmonton Oilers last night, and it was deserved. A goal, no assists, 1 point for him. Really, he could have been on most of the goals. He wasn't on for all the goals, but he was just producing producing. The goal actually that Markus Niemelainen scored in the first period actually started by a giveaway from Dylan Holloway, forced by Dylan Holloway, kept the pressure in the offensive zone, and ended up in the back of the net for the Edmonton Oilers. Speaking of Markus Niemelainen had a very good game for the Edmonton Oilers last night. Just a very solid performance, a top 4 performance from Markus Niemelainen, obviously starting off with the goal, which is something that people don't really see in Markus Niemelainen's game. Yet he is over 6 feet tall, or 6'5". Really, he's taller than 6'5". And everybody expects him to bang. Everybody expects him to throw those big hits, which he did, and set a tone early with those big hits. But he can move the puck. This has been something that a lot of people within the organization and people who have watched Niemelainen for a couple of years have really endorsed in Niemelainen's game. He can move the puck. He can shoot the puck, as we've seen as well. But he can move the puck when needed, which is a very, very necessary need for Markus Niemelainen if he's going to make the Edmonton Oilers this year, and especially if he's going to beat out a guy like Philip Broberg or a Ryan Murray. There are some very, very big players for Markus Niemelainen to jump over to make the Edmonton Oilers this year. But if he were, and this was a great start to it, Markus Niemelainen, again, a goal, no assist, a point from last night, really was a defensive leader for the Edmonton Oilers last night. Speaking of the defense and the defensive leader, let's talk about the maturation of Evan Bouchard, as Evan Bouchard started alongside Brett Kulak on the Edmonton Oilers blue line last night. Really, really good showing from Bouchard. Normally, yes, these are preseason games, but you like to see the general, essentially, the ice when he's out on the ice. General lead the ice when he's out on the ice. This is going to be Evan Bouchard's second full season in the NHL for the Edmonton Oilers, and you can already see his confidence, his maturity rise over the last summer, really. You could even see it during the formal skates, I guess, but the informal scrimmage against the Edmonton Oilers on Saturday in front of all the fans. You can really see the maturation of almost called him Philip Bouchard. Evan Bouchard. Happy Monday, everybody, where our brains are frizzled and fried and all the improper words. But Evan Bouchard got an assist from a Bouch bomb, was tipped out in front. I thought it was a Bouch bomb goal, but either way, Evan Bouchard already looking like he's in mid-season form. Really excited to see what he can do over the next couple of weeks into this season as well. Also on the back end, Dmitry Samorukov. Not a fantastic showing for Samorukov. No points in that game. Yes, he was a third-pairing defenseman, but not a lot of smart passes from Samorukov. Some nice plays from him, but if you're taking a look at Samorukov, yes, he has some size. He's been looking good with his foot speed. Some of his decisions with the puck have not been fantastic. Since the start of the camp, it's starting to look like an uphill battle for Dmitry Samorukov to make this team. To round out the forward group or to talk about the forward group for the Edmonton Oilers, some of the highlights for them, I really want to talk about, Ryan McLeod and Jesse Puljujärvi. I mean, those two guys. Ryan McLeod just looked like the top center for the Edmonton Oilers in that game. Obviously, he was in this lineup, but was always everywhere, always dictating the play. When he had the puck, was always the first look for the defenseman from an outlet pass, and he really was one of those smart players for the Edmonton Oilers last night. Guy like Jesse Puljujärvi played very well next to Ryan McLeod. Again, as mentioned, that pairing, or really that line of Foegele, McLeod, and Puljujärvi is nice. I could see it as a third line, but we shall see. I know a lot of people are giving a lot of flack to Puljujärvi already, but it's the small things that Puljujärvi has been doing that a lot of people just don't see. and then people get mad at you for pointing those out and going, yeah, but he's not scoring goals. Yeah, keep it in your pants. And then I also wanted to mention as well, James Hamblin just had another fantastic game for the Edmonton Oilers, really making a push for that fourth line center spot, or fourth line spot in general. Really, that guy can play anywhere as a forward for the Edmonton Oilers. Scored a goal last night as well. I believe it was the tip-in from Evan Bouchard's shot as well. And Tyler Benson really skating well for the Edmonton Oilers, getting into a lot of scrums and stuff like that. That third line in general, along with Xavier Bourgault, really good energy line, always moving, really good feet. I could see all of those guys at some point potentially playing for the Edmonton Oilers this year. And finally, last player I wanted to bring up is Stuart Skinner, 19 for 19 on his saves last night against the Winnipeg Jets. Just looked very solid, very calm, as I put in my notes. Skinner, calm. Very, very smart goaltender, very systematic, and I believe it was Cam Moon who mentioned it after the game on Oilers TV. Just how much you see the maturation in his game as well, going from the WHL into the AHL, into the ECHL, really, into the AHL, into the NHL now for the Edmonton Oilers. You can really see just how far he has come as a goaltender. As pointed out in that interview as well with Tony Brar and Bob Stauffer, only 20 years old. A lot to still come from Stuart Skinner, and a lot to come from a couple of the prospects from the Edmonton Oilers. Two of them, I think, could make the Oilers roster this year. We will talk about them in just a second, but first, I want to tell you about our partners over at Athletic Greens, because our next partner has a product that I use literally every day. I started taking AG1 because I really wanted to take something that is good for me, a supplement that actually tastes great, but also optimizes my gut health, and as well, I just don't want to take all of those pills all the time just to feel good, just to feel like a good person, like somebody who is healthy. But that is exactly what I get with our partners over at AG1. So what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, your focus, your aging, all of those things. All of those things. I've got my parents on it, and I genuinely get texts from them every so often going, thank you so much for getting us on AG1, because we use it every day. It is lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, it is good for you. Plus, it contains less than 1 gram of sugar with no GMOs, no nasty chemicals, or artificial anything, all while still tasting great. Plus, it costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's actually cheaper than your cold brew addiction, which I don't have my cold. We're already in the right step here. Athletic Greens also has over 7,000 5-star reviews and is recommended by professional athletes everywhere. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is head to athleticgreens.com/NHL network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Alrighty, moving on to the 2 prospects that I think should crack the Edmonton Oilers roster come opening day. And I started off today's episode saying no, It's not Philip Broberg. Well, yes, I do think Philip Broberg should be on the Edmonton Oilers roster come opening day, but that's not who I'm talking about today. Today, I'm talking about Dylan Holloway, who is basically a shoo-in for the Edmonton Oilers roster, especially after last night. And Xavier Bourgault. I think Xavier Bourgault should be an Edmonton Oiler, an NHLer, come opening day in just 2 weeks. I think he should be on that opening day roster. I'll talk about Xavier Bourgault in just a second, but let's start off with Dylan Holloway. Dylan Holloway in every game so far this preseason, from Penticton to last night's game, has been the best player on the ice. The best player. And he's only, 20 years old? Just turned 20 years old? Every time he has stepped on the ice in an Edmonton Oilers uniform, he has been the best player on the ice. Last night, 6 shots on goal for Dylan Holloway. Again, it really seemed like he should have had more than 1 goal last night for the Oilers. 3 hits for him, and a guy who is young and consistently all over the ice. 3 hits for a young guy, also throwing hits on a guy like Logan Stanley, who's 6'8". For a young kid trying to make the team is something that you saw years ago. Not from a guy who's basically etched into a roster already. This is a guy who still thinks that he needs to do something to make the Edmonton, which he does. He still needs to show something. But it's a different showing than what you see from most guys who are going, oh, I'm going to make the team. I'm just going to go out there and produce goals or whatever. He is doing everything he can with the puck, without the puck, on the puck, off the puck. Dylan Holloway is doing all the things right. Last night, we saw him in a whole bunch of different situations for the Edmonton Oilers as well. We saw him on the penalty kill, the power play. He was taking face-offs, which was something that didn't seem quite possible for him for a little while still after his surgery. Now, as a lot of people have been close to the organization have projecting that he might be a center down the road for the Edmonton Oilers. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but down the road for his career. And he was drafted, if I'm not mistaken, as a centerman. That would help the Edmonton Oilers center core, which really needs some help out of the Edmonton Oilers roster. And he could really help with that. Plus 3 takeaways for Dylan Holloway too. Again, that off the puck and on the puck mentality has really helped him in every possible way. Really took advantage of that as well. Last night played 17 minutes, 14 seconds, which was the 3rd highest amongst forwards yesterday. Only behind Ryan McLeod and Jesse Puljujärvi. So that shows a little bit of trust. Behind the 2 NHLers on that roster yesterday was Dylan Holloway with the 3rd most time on ice amongst forwards last night. Obviously, as mentioned, he's been able to create ice and create space with his body and as well with his feet. Somehow he's faster than some of these NHLers on the ice. Yes, there were not a lot of NHLers on the ice for the Winnipeg Jets last night, but he's been able to step up on those guys, as mentioned, with the Logan Stanley, but also beat him with his feet as well. He really knows all of his tools in the toolbox will help him build something very special. Dylan Holloway, as he's already basically etched into the Edmonton Oilers roster, really solidified his spot last night for the Edmonton Oilers. Now, flip side, Xavier Bourgault, a guy who's not expected to make the Edmonton Oilers roster. No, he hasn't gotten any points really, if at all. I believe he had 2 assists in Penticton, if that, for the Edmonton Oilers in the Young Stars Classic. But it's not always about point production. Yes, those are nice. Getting those points are nice. But when you're a player like Xavier Bourgault, those points will come naturally. For Xavier Bourgault, the biggest thing, and you hear it from a lot of guys who've used to play in the NHL, who've watched these young guys who come up into organizations and through organizations. And the most important things for those players to keep an eye out on is making sure you are improving your game off the puck, away from the puck. And you can see Xavier Bourgault really develop into something away from the puck. Now, the interesting thing is for Xavier Bourgault is he's a puck hawk. Just like in football, when you talk about those cornerbacks or those safeties who are really good at intercepting those passes or knocking those passes away from the receivers, that's what Xavier Bourgault is. Yes, he is fantastic with the puck. Yes, he's fantastic offensively. And you call those guys in football a ball hawk. But in hockey, that's exactly what Xavier Bourgault does when he doesn't have the. And he is very good of tracking the puck and getting that puck back on his stick and into the offensive zone. Xavier Bourgault is a puck hawk already, almost at the NHL level, and if he can develop that further on into training camp, he is going to make a very, very, very difficult decision for the Edmonton Oilers and Jay Wood. He can get away from players with his speed. His feet are fantastic. He has a fantastic hockey sense. I mean, he just knows where to be almost all the time for the Edmonton Oilers. Yes, he's fast, but he's also willing to go up against those big guys. If you went to the Edmonton Oilers skate on Saturday, you saw him go up in multiple battles against Markus Niemelainen, Michael Kesselring, Phil Kemp, some of the big guys on the Edmonton Oilers, and he wasn't afraid to go into those dirty areas and try and get the puck back. There was one instance where he went kind of awkward into the boards, didn't go down or anything like that, but it seemed like he was maybe favoring a side a little bit, didn't miss a shift, was right back out there right away. His line was really doing stuff. And again, that line with Hamblin and Benson as well was very fun to watch. I think he should be on the Edmonton Oilers next year, but if not, he is going to be one of the very last cuts for the Edmonton Oilers this year. Every single time Xavier Bourgault is on the ice, he is noticeable. So, you see Xavier Bourgault's name on a game sheet at all over the next couple of weeks, make sure you're honing in to number 54, because he might be an Edmonton Oiler this year. I think he should be. But we do have a game tonight in Seattle, as Erica from Locked On Kraken and I have already been going at it today on Twitter. Yes, it's preseason, but a win's a win, baby. That's all that matters. We will talk about the Seattle game in just a second, and the lineup that has been leaked. Not really leaked, but Bob Stauffer has tweeted out who is in Seattle right now. So we will talk about that lineup and some extra notes just on that in just a second. But first, I want to thank you for making Locked On Oilers your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, make sure you tune in to Locked On NHL. Locked On experts give you a daily 30-minute podcast on all things NHL all year long. Stay up to date on everything in the hockey world with Locked On NHL, your daily 30-minute NHL podcast. Alrighty, and finally for the Edmonton Oilers tonight, they are in Seattle on the Pacific Coast for the Edmonton Oilers for a preseason game against the Seattle Kraken. The Edmonton Oilers lineup has relatively dropped, or the projected lineup has dropped, as Tony Brar and Bob Stauffer have tweeted out some of the lines that are at practice today for the Edmonton Oilers. So we will go through some of those, and an interesting lineup for the Edmonton Oilers we shall see. Again, they are in Seattle, so they're not going to send a Draisaitl, a McDavid, a Darnell. They're not going to send those. But there is an interesting name that I was kind of expecting that I did want to talk about just because it is the Pacific Coast. So the Edmonton Lions tonight look like Mattias Janmark on the first line with Devin Shore and Derek Ryan. Second line of Tyler Benson, James Hamblin, and Kyler Yamamoto. Reed Schaefer, Greg McKegg, and Jake Virtanen is the third line for the Edmonton Oilers. Luke Esposito making his NHL preseason debut this year for the Edmonton Oilers on the fourth line, along with Noah Philp and Seth Griffith also making his debut. On the back end, Philip Broberg along with Tyson Barrie. Markus Niemelainen making his second straight game with the Edmonton Oilers will be playing along with Maximus Warner. And Alex Peters, a guy who has been very, very interesting for the Edmonton Oilers at their camp this year, will play along with Michael Kesselring in net. Olivier Rodrigue will start in sometime in the second or starting off the third. Ryan Fanti will be the backup in Seattle for the Oilers. Now, first thing I do want to mention is that it sounds like Mattias Janmark isn't just going to have Janmark on the back of his jersey. It sounds like he will be hyphenating his name for the Edmonton Oilers. So that means the Oilers have a second hyphenated name behind Nugent-Hopkins. Now, it is Mattias Janmark Niemelainen. Yes, Niemelainen. Nyle for Mattias Janmark. So if you already bought your Janmark jerseys, might want to get them restitched at the brand new Edmonton Oilers store. But I just wanted to mention that because I think that's cool. First impressions on the Edmonton Oilers lineup tonight. It is nice to see Kyler Yamamoto playing in Seattle. Obviously, he is from the Pacific West Coast, or the Pacific Coast, I guess, from the Edmonton Oilers, or for the Edmonton Oilers tonight. Played in Spokane for the Spokane Chiefs in the dub. So a little bit of a homecoming for Yamamoto there, playing on the second line with Tyler Benson and James Hamblin. The interesting there to watch is I think James Hamblin is a very similar player to Kyler Yamamoto, who does go into those dirty areas, really fights for pucks. He's not the biggest frame, just like Kyler Yamamoto, so he really uses the most of his frame to get the puck and force something for the Edmonton Oilers. I think that line with Tyler Benson and Kyler Yamamoto will be quite interesting to watch tonight for the Oilers. Now, the top pairing of Broberg and Barrie, it'll be big to see how Broberg really steps up in the preseason for the Edmonton Oilers. Little bit of a wishy-washy camp for Broberg, depending on who you ask. I liked him in Penticton. Obviously, you have to realize that, yes, he was going at maybe a 75% in that series, or in that tournament, because he doesn't want to get hurt and hurt his chances of making the team, but he still looked a step above everybody he was playing against. Now he'll be playing against NHLers, or guys who are closer to making the NHL. Now is the big test for him, especially it seems like Tyson Barrie and him will be that pairing for the Edmonton Oilers this year. Interesting to see the early chemistry between them in camp. Now, Markus Niemelainen making his second straight start for the Edmonton Oilers, or second straight game, really, for the Edmonton Oilers. Tough schedule for him, going from Edmonton, then flying straight to Seattle. But he is next to Maximus Warner, who has been an interesting story for the Edmonton Oilers so far. With Cody Ceci being out for the start of camp, he was that guy who was slotted next to Darnell Nurse at the start of training camp. Now, the interesting thing is, if you were at the Saturday skate for the Edmonton Oilers fan day, Connor McDavid rammed Max Warner from behind. Really hit him hard. Now, maybe not hard. It was just a little bit, he was off balance. McDavid came right at the right time. A tough fall for Warner. It looked like from behind, was able to tuck the shoulder and fall safely. But it wasn't a very good game for Warner. Yes, his first time in front of Oilers fans, really. A couple of bad mistakes. I don't want to say bad necessarily, but they weren't great mistakes. Didn't move the puck fantastic. Now, again, he is a placeholder for Cody Ceci. but a guy that the Edmonton Oilers have a lot of trust in down the stretch. He ended up moving down. I believe he ended up with either Michael Kesselring or Phil Kemp later on in the scrimmage. Not a fantastic showing for Warner, so this will be a big bounce back for him tonight on that second pairing. Also, Alex Peters, a guy on the defensive end for the Edmonton Oilers, scored a beauty at the scrimmage as well for the Edmonton Oilers on Saturday. Bob Stauffer was mentioning that Peters is looking like a guy who shouldn't be on an AHL contract. He should be on an NHL contract. And I won't lie, he was one of the more impressive players at that skate on Saturday. Will be interesting to watch him play for the Edmonton Oilers tonight. Finally, as well, just to mention for the Edmonton Oilers, that third line will be interesting to watch with Reed Schaefer and Jake Virtanen on the wings of Greg McKegg. Reed Schaefer, who's looked decent. Not exactly a goal-scoring guy, but a guy who's also been very, very impressive with his feet and constantly in the right position for him. Interesting to watch him play, and a very interesting winger to play along with as well. A guy who has played in the league. Actually, both guys have played in the league for the Reed Schaefer with Greg McKegg and Jake Virtanen. So we shall see how he fits in there. Again, as mentioned, the goaltenders for the Edmonton Oilers, starting off, Olivier Rodrigue, Ryan Fanti will end the game for the Oilers. Puck drop will be at 8 p.m. at the Climate Change Arena in Seattle. You can watch the game on Oilers TV. Most likely on YouTube. Again, I know some people did have some stream issues, including myself, but yes, you can watch the game there for now. Finally, just some notes to end today on. Jake Chiasson has been sent back to the Brandon Wheat Kings of the WHL. A pretty impressive showing for Chiasson. A lot of people talking about his camp at the Edmonton Oilers organization, within the Edmonton Oilers organization. Could be a guy to watch if and when the Brandon Wheat Kings are in Edmonton playing the Oil Kings. Make sure you go and watch Jake Chiasson play there. Now, he was the first player to be sent back, I guess, sent down, cut, if you really want to be that way about it. I expect we'll be seeing some cuts in the next couple of days, probably after tonight's game against Seattle, either tomorrow morning, tonight, or even into Wednesday. I could see some more cuts coming. But either way, all the best to Jake Chiasson this season. Very impressive showing for him at the camp. We are going to call it there. Once again, the Seattle Kraken and the Edmonton Oilers face off in preseason action tonight at 8 p.m. Mountain Time. You can watch that on Oilers TV tonight. Very fun times. We are finally back with hockey and game reviews. We get to review a whole bunch of games and preview games. How fun is that? We don't get to talk about the what ifs and what happens if, or what happens when this happens. We finally get to talk about the absolutes. Let's call it there. I hope you have a wonderful day. As last night we finally got to play La Bamba in Edmonton at Rogers Place for the first time since the playoffs. And you know what to do, baby. Have a wonderful day and play La Bamba, baby.